My name is Claudia Herrera. I'm 40 years old and I was born in Guanajuato, a city full of hills and ancient history in the heart of Mexico. I grew up amidst my grandmother's prayers and the smell of homemade bread coming out of the oven every morning. Faith has always been part of my life, but over time it turned into something more ritual than real. I still believed in God, but from afar, as if he were a childhood memory that we keep in a dusty box. I work as a history teacher at a public school. I like to tell students about ancient civilizations and how choices shape people's destinies. But, ironically, I never thought much about my own destiny until that day. It was a hot March afternoon. I was returning alone from an education conference in San Luis Potosí. I took a secondary road to avoid heavy traffic. The surrounding mountains seemed to be sleeping under the sun, and everything was silent, as if the world had taken a breather. I felt strangely calm. I turned on the radio, an old song started playing, and then everything happened absurdly and quickly. I remember a flash coming from a car that appeared out of nowhere on the wrong side of the road. My heart raced. I hit the brakes. The sound of the impact was dry, as if time had broken. The car spun, rolled over, and everything went dark. I don't know how long I stayed like that, but the darkness felt alive. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was as if something was pulling me out of my body, out of reality. I felt like I wasn't there anymore, and it wasn't a dream. It was more real than any moment I had ever experienced. I heard voices, but not with your ears. It was as if my spirit had heard. Soft, firm voices that said, "Calm down, fear not, you are not alone." And then I was sucked up, away from the road, away from the car, away from the blood running down my face. Everything became light, as if I had taken off heavy clothes, a tired body. And then the light appeared. It was a living light. I can't explain, it didn't hurt her eyes. She hugged. She understood me. It was there that I began to die, or perhaps I began to truly live. The first thing I noticed when I was completely enveloped by that light was silence, but it wasn't an empty silence, it was full. A silence full of presence, of meaning, as if every particle of that light was alive, conscious, in communion with me. I no longer had a body. I was just consciousness, a free but incredibly lucid point of perception, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at home. There was no ground, there was no sky. Everything was made of the same luminous substance, as if I were immersed in the heart of a star, but without heat, without weight. It was pure love. Not human love, with its doubts and jealousies. It was a love that crossed everything, that knew who I was down to the last thought that I never admitted to anyone. And still he accepted me. He welcomed me. It was then that I saw them. Beings appeared around me. They didn't walk, they didn't speak with words, but I understood them perfectly. They were tall, translucent, human-shaped, but made of pulsating light. Some had wings, yes, but not like the images we see in paintings. They were more like energetic extensions that vibrated, almost singing. I knew, without anyone explaining it to me, that they were angels, real beings. Authority and tenderness coexisted in them perfectly. They looked at me as someone who sees beyond the flesh, beyond life, beyond time. One of them came closer, and although he didn't say anything with his mouth, he spoke directly into my soul. "You were called to see and to return." At that moment, I realized that I was not dead in the final sense. I was between worlds, like a visitor, and these beings were leading me. They took me floating through that space of light to a specific point where a kind of opening appeared. It wasn't a door, but it looked like a curved window, like a living lens. When I looked through it, I saw Earth. But it wasn't the present. It was like I was watching a timeline, and I soon understood. I was about to see the future. My heart, or what was left of it in that state, started beating again, just in a different way. I felt a weight, as if what I was about to witness was serious. One of the angels placed his light on my spiritual shoulder and said firmly, "You can't change what you see, but you can warn." And at that moment, the window of time opened completely. The window before me looked liquid, as if it were made of liquid light, but it revealed images with stunning clarity. When I looked through it, I was instantly taken to a scene I will never forget. It was the Vatican. I recognized it immediately. St. Peter's Square, the immense colonnades, the gathered crowd. But it wasn't a celebration. It was a funeral. A heavy silence covered that crowd like a dark cloak. People were crying, there were flags at half-mast, and in the center of it all, in front of the basilica, was the coffin. A simple white coffin adorned with gold. I knew, without anyone telling me, that this was the funeral of a pope. And even scarier, I knew this would happen in year 2025. The bells rang slowly. The air was charged with something more than sadness. There was a tension, an invisible shift in the spiritual fabric of humanity. Something had been ripped away, something sacred. Cameras from all over the world were there. Religious leaders, politicians, and public figures were present, but what gave me chills was feeling that many there knew something bigger was in motion, although they did not understand what. And I felt that death wasn't just the end of a man, it was the beginning of a new time. An angel next to me said in a direct voice in my mind, "With him leaves the last break. Now what has already been written will come." Before I could ask what that meant, the scene changed. The image transformed like a wave, and I was led to see the unfolding of it. I saw crowds around the world in confusion. I saw churches being vandalized, sacred symbols distorted and rewritten. I saw spiritual messages being used to control, not liberate. A new leader emerged, a charismatic, intelligent, soft-spoken figure with penetrating eyes. He promised peace, but inside there was darkness. His presence made the angels around me recoil. "That's the big deceiver," said one of them. "He will come in the name of light, but he carries darkness." I tried to look away, but the vision kept me trapped. It was as if my soul had to absorb every detail, every gesture, every consequence. I saw nations ceding their sovereignty to this new system, all in the name of stability. But the price was freedom of the soul. That's when I understood I was seeing the beginning of the time of Antichrist, and it all started with the death of that pope. And with the illusion that would come soon after. The window remained open. I had no control over what I saw, but I felt that each image was placed before me with a purpose. It was like a revelation being poured into my soul, and as much as it hurt, I knew I needed to see it. After the ascension of that figure, everything began to transform. At first, it seemed like a new golden age. Governments that were previously in conflict began to sign agreements. Economic crises have mysteriously been resolved. People were more connected, more obedient, but also more apathetic, as if a part of their will had been turned off. The leader, who was never called king, nor president, only guardian, spoke with a hypnotic calm. His every speech was broadcast in every language at the same time, as if technology itself bent to his will. And it was strange. There was something in his voice that seemed to please everyone. Even those who were against it at first gave in. Slowly, I saw old temples being reused. I saw crosses being replaced by a new symbol, a circle intertwined with golden serpents. And that made me nauseous. It was as if I was watching the soul of the world being exchanged before my eyes. I mentally asked the angels, "Why don't people realize? Don't they see the mistake?" The answer came firmly, but with sadness. Because they exchange the truth for comfort. The spirit of lies only reigns where the truth has been forgotten. Technology has evolved to a point that borders on the supernatural. People no longer needed to leave their homes for anything. They were fed, entertained, controlled by systems that knew their emotions before they even felt them. It was as if humanity had entered a collective trance and surrendered your free will with a smile. But not everyone was sleeping. I saw small groups. People hiding, praying in secret, gathering in forests, in caves, in ancient ruins. They had no power, no resources, but they carried something in their eyes. Something I recognized immediately. Faith. The light surrounding them was weaker, but it was genuine, and I realized this was where spiritual resistance was being born. At that moment, one of the angels touched me. It was as if a spiritual code had been activated within me, and he said, "You will be a witness. You will return to warn. Your time is not yet over." My entire being shook, and even in the face of so much terror, I felt a flame light up inside. Because now I knew there was hope, but it would require courage and sacrifice. The window of time was still open before me, but now the images came in waves, as if each scene took me deeper into understanding what was to come. It wasn't just a sequence of events. It was a sacred story unfolding. And I, a simple Mexican woman, was being invited to watch it and to witness it afterwards. I saw the sky on earth darkening abnormally. It wasn't night. It was as if creation itself was sad. There were atmospheric phenomena that defied science, auroras in places that never had them, shooting stars that looked like messages, unseasonal eclipses. But the most striking was the bleeding sky, red clouds that took the shape of eyes, inverted crosses, crying faces. People looked, took photos, made jokes on social media. Few understood. Few felt. The Guardian explained everything with reassuring speeches. These are just climate reactions. We are in control. And the people believed. But in me, something burned. An urgency. A weight. It was as if every sign in the sky was a silent cry from the Creator. Wake up. The time is running out. Then the angels showed me another scene. It was a child, just 7 years, in a refugee camp. She held a small cross made of 2 sticks, tied with string. He cried in silence. All around her there was chaos, soldiers, fire, but that little cross shone. And the angel said to me, "It is in the small, in the forgotten, in those whom the world rejects, that the light still lives." That tore me up inside. I cried. And for the first time there, in that dimension, I felt something like guilt. For all the times I cared more about comfort than the truth. It was at that moment that I was shown a mirror. But it didn't reflect my physical face. I reflected my spiritual life. I saw my choices, my unspoken words, my cowardly silences, my mechanical prayers. All. And there was no trial. There was only truth. Pure, absolute. And that's when I understood. The judgment begins within, in the intimate, what we choose every day when no one is looking. The angel touched me again, and he said something that resonates with me to this day. Go back. The time is near, and there are many who can still wake up. At that moment, I knew that my return would be certain. But first, I still had more to see, and the hardest part was yet to come. After the global visions, the light around me changed. It became more intense, almost blinding, and the angels, until then serene, were now in motion, as if something greater was about to be revealed. It was as if the spiritual atmosphere was about to break. One of them approached and said solemnly, "You've seen the effects. Now you'll see the source." I was taken to a different space. There was no time there, no shape. It was like being in the heart of the invisible, and there, in front of me, a battle began to unfold that wasn't made of swords or bombs. It was made of intentions, thoughts, unspoken words, hidden feelings. I saw dark forces that fed on anger, envy, pride. They were like living smoke, snaking between human souls, whispering sweet lies, distorting the perception of truth. And the scariest thing was that many people didn't even know they were being used. I saw men and women defending noble causes, with faces full of justice, but with hearts filled with ego and vanity. I saw spiritual leaders falling, families falling apart from within, young people giving their minds over to an endless stream of distraction. All of this fed a hidden structure, an invisible spiritual network that prepared the throne for the great deceiver. But on the other side of him there was also light. I saw anonymous souls praying alone at night in silence, without likes, without applause. I saw mothers praying for their children with tears. I saw men giving up power to follow their inner voice. I saw children healing wounds with simple gestures. Each act of pure love generated a growing light, and that light, it hurts in the darkness. The angel then revealed, The coming war will not be won by force, nor by politics, nor by shouts. It will be won inwardly, in choices that no one sees, in the secret altar of the heart. I was shaking, because now I saw everything. The external stage was just the tip of the iceberg. The real battle was spiritual, and it was daily, personal, silent. I looked at Earth once again. I saw a crowd walking towards an abyss, smiling, distracted. I saw others trying to wake up, screaming but being ignored, and I realized that my role upon returning would be to join the latter, be one of those voices, even if no one listened at first. At that moment I felt a gentle tug. The light began to change tone. The angels retreated slightly. One of them looked at me sweetly, but with a clear urgency. It's almost time, but there's one last thing you need to see. And then, a new window opened before me. The new window that opened before me no longer showed cities, wars, or familiar faces. Instead, I was taken to a completely different place, a valley of peace. Golden sky, like sunrise after a storm. In the center of this valley, there were a colossal tree with roots that seemed to reach the heart of the earth, and branches that touched infinity. It pulsed with life. It was no ordinary tree. It was as if each leaf contained a story, a memory, a soul. I was drawn close to her. I felt that that tree knew me, that she knew everything about me, from the day I was conceived in my mother's womb until that moment there, between the worlds. Its leaves whispered eternal secrets, and each whisper passed through me like waves of absolute love. At the foot of the tree there was a book. It was immense, with a living cover, yes, living, made of something that breathed, that reacted to my presence. When I looked at him, the angel that accompanied me manifested again. This is the Book of Callings. I didn't need to ask what that meant. I understood. It was a spiritual record of all who had been chosen to see, to hear, and to return. With hands that weren't hands, I opened the book. And there, among the names of men and women of all times, of different languages and ages, I saw mine, Claudia Herrera. Next to my name, there was not a written mission, but rather one word: to warn. At that moment, the tree glowed. A white light came out of its trunk and completely enveloped me. I felt every part of my being restored, not just my body, but my deepest truth. And then I heard the clearest voice in the entire experience. It wasn't one of the angels. It was something bigger, older, more tender. You saw. Now speak. Many will hear and remember who they are. It broke me inside. I cried, not out of fear, but out of a love so immense that my spiritual heart could barely contain it. Because for the first time, I felt fully seen, known, loved, and sent. The light began to retract. The valley disappeared. The tree dissolved like golden smoke in the wind. The angel said goodbye with one last look. You will come back different, but you won't be alone. And then, without warning, I was pulled away, fast, as if falling from the sky. I felt my body, the weight, the pain, the sound of machines, voices screaming my name, and my eyes opened in the ICU. When I opened my eyes, the bright white light was replaced by cold fluorescent lights cutting through the ceiling of a hospital. There were voices, metallic noises, the smell of antiseptic, and pain. A lot of pain. My body felt distant, as if I had stepped back into something cramped, broken, foreign. I couldn't move properly. My face was covered in scratches, my leg was in a cast. There were wires attached to my chest, but nothing hurt more than the absence of light. His absence. Someone shouted, "She's back!" I saw a breathless doctor, looking at me with wide eyes. Then I heard someone crying. It was my sister who had been called away in a hurry. They said my heart had stopped for 4 minutes. I was declared clinically dead. And then, inexplicably, I came back. Inexplicably, for them. To me, it all made sense. But I couldn't speak. Words escaped me. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because, as to say, how can I explain that without sounding crazy? In the days that followed, my body slowly recovered, but my soul burned. I cried alone. At night, it wasn't sadness, it was longing, an impossible longing. I miss a place that knew me more than I knew myself. I miss the tree, the light, the angels, and that final voice. I was silent for weeks, not out of fear, but out of reverence. It was as if the experience was still settling inside me. I would wake up in the middle of the night with sentences in my head, with visions of the future throbbing to behind my eyes. I knew I couldn't keep it to myself, but I also knew I couldn't go around telling just anyone. So I started with small steps. First, I wrote everything down, every detail, every scene, in a simple notebook, which I keep to this day. Then I started talking to my sister, to my mother, to a nearby priest. Some listened to me with respect, others with fear. But something curious started to happen. Some cried without knowing why. Others said they felt something in the air, a presence, a peace. That's when I realized the light was still with me, not in the same way, but inside, alive, pulsing. One day in prayer, I silently asked, "Lord, where do I begin?" And I felt the answer, not in words, but as a whisper in my soul. Start with those who have ears. Little by little, I began to share my testimony publicly, not to convince anyone, but for to warn. And in this increasingly noisy world, I discovered that whoever needs to listen always listens. When I finally decided to share my experience publicly, I didn't know what to expect. I recorded a simple video in my room with my cell phone camera, the Bible open next to me, and my heart pounding. I didn't rehearse, I just said it, like I was talking to someone I loved deeply and needed to wake up to. I told everything. The light, the angels, the tree, the time window, the death of the Pope, the Guardian, the beginning of the tribulation, and the last message I received, "Come back and let us know, the time is near." I posted the video and turned off my cell phone. I was silent the rest of the day. Deep down, I expected criticism, perhaps mockery, but I didn't expect what came. Thousands of people started watching, to share, comment. Some called me a visionary, others crazy. But what surprised me were the private messages. Hundreds, then thousands. People saying that something inside them moved when they heard my story. People who hadn't prayed in years and felt like getting down on their knees. Mothers who began to pray with their children before bed. Young people who felt a fire in their chest and returned to seeking God. It was then that I realized it wasn't about me. It never was. It was about Him, about the calling, about urgency. But not everything was easy. I lost friends. Co-workers looked at me sideways. I was called into concerned conversations where they tried to convince me to put this aside. They said I was affected, that it was just an illusion caused by the trauma of the accident. But the light I saw was no illusion. The body pain was real, yes, but more real was the peace that remained in my soul after the experience. A peace that does not depend on circumstances. A faith that cannot be explained. It is lived. Today, I continue my work as a teacher, but now I teach more than history. Teaching has become a spiritual act, and every student is a sacred soul. I speak carefully. I pray silently for them, and sometimes I leave clues, small invitations to light. I live in constant prayer, watch the signs, and yes, the year 2025 has arrived. The feeling that something is approaching is stronger than ever. I see it in people's eyes, in the restlessness of the world, in the acceleration of events, as if something was about to be born or about to collapse. But I'm not afraid, because I saw it. I know we are not alone, and that even in the deepest darkness, the light always finds those who want to be found. Today, when I look at the sky at dusk, that golden light that touches the rooftops and silences the streets for a moment reminds me of there, from the place where I was, of the light that does not blind but reveals, of the angels who do not speak but awaken, from the living tree, from the book, and the voice that called me by name. Not a day goes by without me remembering it. Sometimes it's just a second, an unexpected shiver, a tear in the middle of a bee. Simple prayer, a fleeting memory of how it all seemed, eternal. Other times the memory comes with force. I see the window opening again inside me, as if time said, there is still something to be accomplished. We are in 2025 now, exactly the year that was shown to me. Everything I saw hasn't happened yet, but the signs are everywhere. The world runs, screams, gets distracted, while the pieces fall into place in silence. The smoke of deception is already in the air. I feel it in the words I hear, in the images I see, in the values being exchanged. But I also see resistance, small, hidden, but alive. I see people waking up. I see eyes opening. I see young people rising up with courage and a thirst for the truth. And that gives me hope. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes. I still question. Myself, I still have difficult days. But since I came back, something has changed inside me forever. I know who I am. I know why I'm here. And I know what I saw. I'm Claudia Herrera, Mexican teacher, ordinary woman, and witness to something that goes beyond anything that can be measured. God gave me the grace to return, not for merit, but for purpose. And my mission is not to convince anyone. And to warn, it's leaving the seed, it's preparing hearts for what comes, and what comes next and will be big. Sometimes I wonder, what if no one listens? What if they mock until the end? But then I remember the child with the stick cross from E.T., the shine in the eyes of the few who resist, from the living tree with each leaf carrying a soul. And that's enough for me. If my voice reaches just one heart, it will be worth coming back. So I say this, looking firmly at you who listen to me now with an open heart. The year 2025 has arrived. What I saw is about to come true, and I'm ready for whatever comes. I'm ready for whatever comes.